In El Salvador, if you want to talk about heroes, Bukele, El Salvador was the murder capital, not just of North and South America, but of the world. He rounded up 80,000 gang members and put them all into purpose-built prisons. He built the biggest prison in the world, shaved their heads, 80,000 people rounded up and thrown in prison, okay? All with gangster tattoos. He solved the biggest problem in El Salvador, which was the murder rate. Now, you can do the same here. Gayton McKenzie is the guy that could do that. Round up the gangsters, chuck them in jail, and off.
Guys, so while Gayton McKenzie is actually staging a war against gangs and gangsterism in South Africa in his own capacity, he's also fighting a war in the parliament against enemies of the GNU, according to how they're called. Last week, an EFF MP actually launched an assault on him that he didn't go to school and he's uneducated. Let's quickly take a listen.
Now, we need to educate the minister that diversity is not limited to race. But because he never gone to school, he's never going to understand. Now, he sings in that hymn book of the DA, protecting Africans, because the DA did that when they were rejecting the Pella Bill. Because to them, nothing else matters except the protection of Africans. And what makes it worse is that he has no legal basis to do this. Because an educated somebody would have known to go and seek a legal opinion before you come here and make such, a dangerous claim. But what do you expect from someone who ran away from school and went and engaged in some illegal activities? Now he comes here to mess up our entities. That's what we are dealing with here.
And you can see that's kind of like a critique according to, Gayton McKenzie's mission, which he believes that he's called to kind of like drive social cohesion in South Africa and bring all the races in South Africa and really drive unity. But then you trust Gayton McKenzie. He's always giving it back to the EFF and back to the MK. Let's listen to how he actually responded to this critique.
Leonardo da Vinci famously said, you cannot truly love or hate anything that you don't truly fully understand. We didn't understand the GNU. We didn't love it, we didn't hate it because we didn't understand it. But we have got to understand it. And I want to say to the people on this side of the house, you must never be embarrassed of the GNU. We have done South Africa the biggest service we can ever do. Let us continue to build the GNU. These ones call me a prisoner, a criminal. The Secretary General has been convicted by a court of law. The President is in front of a court of law. The real leaders is now here by MK. These people are divorced. They took each other's wives and husbands. We are still together. We are intact. The GNU forever. Happy Christmas. Let us continue to serve the people. And I want to warn the PA. I want to warn the DA. I want to warn the ANC. Be very soft on EFF. You can't be so hard on a dying man and a dying woman. Please have mercy on them. Please have mercy on them. These people they are dead. Yeah, they kill us. These people killed them. Slowly with a smile. They said we are not going to last. Look, we are all together with John Steenhuisen, Gwede Mantashe. We are working together. We are cruising very nicely. So to all of you, you killed the EFF. You must admit that. Thank you very much. Muni Baizani. It is the new year, and listen to me. When I told you Abahambe, this illegal foreigners, and now you see what they're doing. So next time when I warn you, please listen to me. These are the killers of EFF.
Ramaphosa.
Thank you very much.
Order.
Yeah, so while all this is going on in Parliament, there's a South African business community that's actually rooting for Gayton McKenzie as the man who is able to fix all of South Africa, or most of South Africa's problem anyway. Rob Hersov, for example, really believes that Gayton McKenzie is the Bukele and Millet of South Africa. So, on this channel, I usually speak a lot about President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, who actually has come to be known as the president that put an end to what would be the murder capital of the world, El Salvador. El Salvador used to have, used to be called the murder capital of the world. Now South Africa has sort of like taken that baton, and South Africa, according to The likes of Neil de Beer argues that South Africa has almost 82 murders a day. So South Africa sort of like has taken that baton, is now the murder capital of the world. But Nayib Bukele's presidency sort of like rounded up most of these gang members, put them in prison, and South Africa, El Salvador seems now sort of like the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. President of El Salvador even argues that El Salvador is safer than the US. And the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, is actually causing another storm in Latin America. In his, upon assuming office recently, he actually cut the cabinet into half. I think in 9 ministries, he actually slashed 50,000 public jobs. You see, public officers like we see Rob Hersov are kind of like critiquing South Africa's ministry, so to speak. He speaks about South Africa's government has too many ministries and many have to be cut down. Javier Milei cut 50,000 of these ministers in 9 ministries, and we know that during the campaign he was that president who had a really strange campaign with a chainsaw, which was the depiction of what he would do when he came to power. That he will be cutting a lot of government ministries and a lot of the fat around government ministries, and that's actually what he's doing. And Argentina is actually argued to be in stabilization at the moment, really heading towards the right direction. So Rob Hersov argues that Gayton McKenzie is both a combination of Bukele and Milei together, because he represents these two metaphors that can actually solve the problem both countries actually suffer in one. That's why I argue that South Africa is a really overwhelmed country with, economic issues, but then also this issue with crime. And Gayton McKenzie seems to be that man that has a sort of like hold on both sides of this problem and has much more promising solutions to these sort of like problems, rather than kind of like diagnosing and complaining about these problems all the time. So let's listen quickly and patiently. I will admonish you guys to listen patiently to how Rob Hersov describes the problems in South Africa and why Gayton McKenzie seems to be the most efficient personnel in government to really fix these issues.
Not Jeremy Ord.
So look at the countries: Italy, United States, Brazil, Ghana, Tanzania, Britain, Norway. And it's the degrees of people in parliament and in government, okay? And if you look at law, social sciences, arts and humanities, and education, okay, which I think are the bad type of people, the people we don't want in government, because lawyers, the more laws, the better for the legal industry. They just continue to, it's a self-proliferating evil, the legal industry. And then administrators and bureaucrats are like light versions of lawyers. And then education, arts and humanities, and social sciences, like political science degrees. These are non-degrees in my view. Sorry, journalism's in there too. I'm going to be honest. These are non-degrees, okay? These are people we don't want in government. It's light degrees, it's weak degrees, it's rubbish degrees. You want hardcore degrees, STEM, science, technology, engineering and math, including health and business. So if you look at the blue, those are the people you want in government. Those are the people that understand investing, building businesses, being efficient. They understand productivity, profitability, growth, employment. And blue is 20 to 30% at most of people in government. There are way too many lawyers and way too many BA type people and political scientists. And South Africa is no different, okay? No different. There are very few people of our ministers that are actually business people. Gayton's probably one of the only ones I can think of in our current ministry. All the rest are politicians and lawyers. Wrong people. So when we go back to Argentina, we can drop this marvelous chart. When we go back to Argentina and look at what this extraordinary man, Javier Milei, has done in 1 year, okay? Inflation was at 7,500%. 7,500%. You're thinking Weimar Republic, people pushing wheelbarrows filled with money to buy a loaf of bread. That's where it was heading.
Zimbabwe. Think Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe.
It's
all these clown countries. He brought within a year it down to 2.8% a month. So it's at 28% and it's going lower. In 1 year, he's had a fiscal surplus for the first time in 10 years. He's removed middlemen in social welfare. He's reduced corruption. He's extraordinary, in 1 year. And his popularity's gone through the roof. It can be done. It can be done in just about any country you want.
Just explain a fiscal surplus.
So countries run on debt or they run on tax income and growth. So you have a surplus, which means you're generating money over and above the costs related to running the government, or you are losing money, which means you have to keep borrowing or keep pumping out more currency, which creates inflation. It's simple discipline. Like in a business, if you have revenue, cost, you then either have profit or loss. It's as simple as that. And the same applies to a country. And a country has its gross national product, gross domestic product. So you have your internal economy, and then you have your economy that's affected by exports, imports, and any macro event. He's got the internal economy under control.
Just to maybe clarify that a little, South Africa runs a budget deficit of about 5% and has been doing so for, since 2008 when we had the last surplus. And the result of that is that you have to borrow to balance the books. So your debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the moment, 20% of all taxes that are paid in South Africa are used to pay interest on the debt that's built up now over the last 15 or so years. What you're saying Milei's done in Argentina, and they've got huge debts, etc., to worry about, but he's fixed that, and now they're not running a deficit like we do in South Africa and America and pretty much most parts of the world, but he's balancing the books. The Argentina's getting in more tax than they're spending. And presumably that's all to do with this chainsaw policy that he was talking about, cutting the costs of government. Now, what he's done there, Trump is trying to do the same thing in America. And if you were serious about it, Rob Hersov would like to do in South Africa. Just explain how it would happen in practice.
In practice in South Africa, I'd line up all the ministries and I'd get rid of half of them overnight. Why do we need a Ministry of Women? We don't. Why do we need a Ministry of Sports, Arts and Culture? We don't. A lot of these ministries are completely irrelevant, and you can push the decisions down to, provinces, states, or private enterprise. Why do we need state-owned enterprises? We should sell them off, all of them. I mean, the ANC's bankrupted South African Airways anyway, and we have fantastic FlySafair and fantastic Airlink and Samair serving us. We don't need the government to own South African Airways. They shouldn't have owned it. And Eskom, it's getting to a point quite soon where private enterprise or public-private partnerships will replace Eskom in all elements: production, distribution, transmission. In every area where we have state-owned enterprises, the private sector can do a better job, and it is already in some ways supplanting our SOEs. So I chopped the ministries to half in the first day, and by the end of the first year, I'd have it halved again. We'd have maybe 12 ministries in total. We would lay off 100,000 useless public workers, and you'd have to take a chainsaw to South Africa, but you could deliver the same results. We'd have a surge in foreign direct investment. We'd have a surge in the R1 trillion of corporates are sitting on in cash being deployed into investment, and we'd have a surge of employment, a surge within 12 months. Enoch could do this. Enoch Godogwana could do this. He knows what's going on in Argentina, and I know he respects what's going on. I've been communicating with him. He could do it. But Cyril is not that man. Cyril is too weak, and he's served his time, and he's got to move on anyway in 2027. He doesn't have the spine to do something like this. You need a new, tough. You need a Javier Milei. And that isn't me, but I'm happy to work with whomever that is. Maybe Elon should come back here and do that job.
He's in the wrong country, isn't he?
What does he really believe in? Is freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. It's economic freedom. It's cultural freedom. It's the freedom of all aspects. And that is what libertarians believe in. Personal freedom. Being able to decide what to do, where to do it, and how to do it with respect for others. A quick point on El Salvador, if you want to talk about heroes. Bukele, I think 2-3 years ago, was elected. He describes himself as the most popular president in the world, and he probably is. And he's done many things, incredible. But he used the state of emergency to do one key thing for El Salvador. El Salvador was the murder capital, not just of the world, not just of North and South America, but of the world. He rounded up 80,000 gang members over a long weekend and put them all into purpose-built prisons. He built the biggest prison in the world, shaved their heads. Go online and have a look at El Salvador. I think they're called Mara gangs. 80,000 people rounded up and thrown in prison, okay? All with gangster tattoos. His homicide rate in El Salvador per 100,000 inhabitants in 2015 was 106. It's down to 2.4. In 2017, there were 4,000 murders that year. In 2024, there have been 80. His popularity has gone through the roof. He solved the biggest problem in El Salvador, which was the murder rate. Now, you can do the same here. Gayton McKenzie is the guy that could do that. Round up the gangsters, chuck them in jail, and off we go. And all the lefties go, maybe a couple of people are innocent. Well, look at the popularity of Bukele. Extraordinary. And these things can be done in South Africa. They're going to get done in America. Watch Trump. Watch Musk. It's going to happen. America's going to take off like a rocket.